What a week for us Chelsea fans. Welcome back to the podcast and to the latest match report from an unfortunate loss, a calamitous loss, all told. If you'd have told me last week that we'd have lost to Man United, I potentially would have believed you. We love to give Man United easy points, but to lose in the manner in which we lost yesterday, so many inexcusable mistakes. We'll get straight into it. Make sure to like, comment and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we will touch on the Bayern loss slightly later in the episode. But it did look like it was all positive. It was all going for us yesterday morning. The under-18s, very convincing win against Brighton, won 4-0, but then the under-21s fell to a 4-2 loss at home to Ipswich, and then the first team losing 2-1. But it's not just the losing from the first team, it's the manner in which we lost. And I think Enzo Maresca will be kicking himself. He will not be the only one. There will be a fair few players kicking themselves. Robert Sanchez, Trevor Chalobah. There have been a fair few. There were a fair few inexcusable performances, inexcusable mistakes from certain individuals in yesterday's game. But I think Enzo Maresca in particular will be kicking himself. The substitutions he made, I've never seen a manager shut up shop so quickly. And somebody drew parables. It's not exactly the same, but somebody drew parallels to the Champions League semi-final where John Terry got sent off very early on for kneeing Alexis Sanchez in the back. And although it's slightly different because it's, a goalkeeper rather than a defender, so you have to make that first sub, I just, the complete intention from Enzo Maresca was all over his face. It's all over the squad. He had no intention of winning that game yesterday. As soon as Robert Sanchez went down, and he said after the game, I would have rather gone a goal down than a player down. But the substitutes that he made essentially ensured that if we did go a goal down, we weren't going to be able to pull it back. And I feel like the Palmer situation, you could take that kind of slightly out of isolation. I get taking Esteval off. Esteval is, the first one to be sacrificed, particularly in conditions like that. While it's a perfect game for him to go up against a player like Mazraoui, cause him loads of problems. The conditions, the physical stature of those Manchester United defenders, I think, it was not a smart move, but I think it's a fairly obvious move for Esteval to be the one to be sacrificed. Pedro Neto, though, I just did not understand. I thought, going down to 10 men, we're obviously going to sit a little bit deeper. We're obviously going to change the shape a little bit. We're obviously going to, be a little bit less progressive going forward. But that is going to allow more spaces in the United half as the game goes on. And we saw how well João Pedro performed yesterday. And before I go on to, any more complaints, any more problems, João Pedro, I think that might have been the best performance I've seen from him in a Chelsea shirt. What he did, particularly in that first half on his own, every time he got the ball, Ankara, Messi. Every time he got the ball, 2-3 players. He's doing Jogo Bonito. He's doing turns in the middle of the park. He's taking it forward. He's looking for something, whether it's on his own, whether it's waiting for a teammate. I thought he was phenomenal yesterday. And, we've said that a lot of people have said his best position is slightly deeper. I thought he was not non-existent, but his effect on the game was neutralised when George came on and played up front. And George was the one that needed to stretch it. George is another one, we'll get onto in a minute. That substitute for me made absolutely no sense. I don't get why Enzo Maresca is now using a player, sparsely, albeit, but using a player that he was trying to get rid of in the summer, or that the club were actively trying to get rid of in the summer. Now we've got other players that have been bought in, like Garnacho, Gittins, Mark Hughes been bought back from loan, and we're still using players like Tyreek George, who was 20 minutes away from leaving the club and going to Fulham on deadline day. I don't understand, yesterday's in-game management and in-game tweaks from Maresca was horrendous, I thought. But going back to that early decision, obviously taking Pedro Neto off, I thought that was the definition of cutting our nose off to spite our face. Because I think Pedro Neto and João Pedro, you got those two, obviously with Cole Palmer on the pitch, hypothetically as well. I feel like you've got more than enough to do damage to Manchester United. As a 2 with Palmer in behind, or as a 3 with Neto on the left, Palmer on the right, João Pedro through the middle. I think those 3, you look at a team like Man United, we could have gone 2-0 down. And with the 11 that we've started the game, I would have been fairly confident we would have been able to get something back. But the fact that Enzo Maresca just shut up shop immediately, and I feel like he would regret the Cole Palmer decision, the Pedro Neto substitution because Cole Palmer had to come off 10 minutes later, and apparently that was injury related. When he came off the pitch, he looked miffed. His reaction said to me it was tactical, it wasn't injury. But then he went down the tunnel, came back, he had ice pack on his groin. Apparently, and this is, I think it's Simon Phillips, who might be Telegraph, Daily Mail, I can't remember who he is, but a Chelsea reporter, has now come out and said, it's no secret that Cole Palmer has been injured since the Club World Cup. He's had a groin injury. The club have been giving him pain injections, or injections to mediate and to negate the pain. But there is still a very much existing injury, an existing problem there. And I think he talked about the overwork, Enzo Maresca, in the press conference. But look, this is something that all the top teams have to compete with, and we can't have just scraped Champions League last season. Got ourselves back into Europe, the world's premier competition. We're all so excited too. The players are absolutely buzzing. We can't now turn around and go, it's tough playing 2 games a week. Number one, we're asking for this. Number two, the majority of you were playing 1 game a week last year, so it shouldn't be much of a step up to go from 1.5 to 2. But I feel like there are so many underlying problems in this Chelsea squad, like Cole Palmer having an injury, Levi Colwill being injured, and Enzo Maresca not having faith in any of his replacements. He's been very vocal. And while he's tried to be positive about Tosin, Chalobah, Badiashile, Fofana, some of the comments he's made, I can't fault when he says Wesley Fofana has one of the worst 45 minutes that I've ever seen. And, he didn't really dig out anybody yesterday. I think the defenders were more, owning up to it themselves. Trevor Chalobah making an admission, an apology on social media. I didn't think Trevor Chalobah was that bad yesterday. This might be a wild take. My brother said to me at halftime he was the worst of the back four. I thought he was, bar Reece James, I thought he was, not the best because Cucurella. I thought he was the better out of the 3 centre-backs that played. Out of Tosin, Chalobah and Fofana, I thought Chalobah did the best. Obviously, he scored as well, but take that goal away. I thought he, on the ball, looked more in tune with the rest of the team than the other players. I don't know what it was yesterday. The defence has been at 6s and 7s for weeks now. And again, underlying problems. Chelsea not starting at the starting whistle, waiting until the other team gets the leg up, waiting until the other team goes 1-2-0 up. Happened to Bayern in midweek. We did not start until we went behind. If we started at the start whistle at 0-0-0-0, we would be so much better off. We would have come out of this last week with potentially 2 draws, maybe even better. But our lack of ability to manage the game for 90 minutes, whether it's seeing it out, whether it's starting correctly, I just think yesterday it was everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. And before I lament the team anymore, I do just want to say that refereeing performance was diabolical. How João Pedro did not get a penalty in the first half, I do not know. That is as stonewall as they come. And it feels so much to me that there is now an agenda against Chelsea because of the whole Fulham and Josh King incident. Any 50-50, any dubious VAR decision, we are not going to get. And again, Chalobah, you could argue that he played Bruno Fernandes on for the first goal. But by the letter of the law, the player in front of Chalobah, who is offside and ahead of Bruno Fernandes, is participating in and interfering with the play. So by the letter of the law, all these officials, these referees, trying to implement rules like you've got to be more than 2 meters away from the wall. The most minor technical things that are absolutely ridiculous, and then they miss something. It's like they're trying to make everything absolute, but they're creating even more margin for error. They're creating even more leeway between what is right and what is wrong, what is the correct decision and what is incorrect. There were so many things yesterday that were just ridiculously frustrating. I think the main decision that did me was in the second half. Bruno Fernandes had a free kick, right, on the right side of the pitch, putting the ball in. The referee drew the lines where the wall should stand and where the ball is. 10 yards, 8 yards, whatever it is, I don't care. The rules seem to change every single year. Bruno Fernandes then moved the ball about 3 yards back from the line to give himself more room to get it over the wall. Andre Santos tried to step forward and the ref was not having any of it. The ref was saying, get back to the line, get back. Andre Santos was saying, the line's there. And he, don't care, get to the line. These referees don't know the rules. It's got to the point where there are so many different confusing rules and so many different issues that get pulled apart under a microscope every single week by pundits, players. They are creating, they've created a monster in PGMOL. And it is incredibly dangerous. And in another game yesterday, Kiernan Dewsbury Hall getting booked for taking a quick free kick too quickly. The bias towards and against certain teams is crazy. And obviously when I say for, it's Liverpool. Obviously when I say against, it's Chelsea. And as I don't want to sit here and complain about decisions too much, because as I've said in previous videos, we've had dubious decisions go for us this year. The one against Palace, the one against Fulham. You could argue 50-50, could go either way. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. We got those decisions in our favour. But we are now, because of those decisions and because of how much scrutiny, in particular, that Fulham one was put under, we are going to get nothing this season. PGMOL, the Premier League, are going to go out of their way to ensure that Chelsea do not have any pro-agenda, pro-narratives, pro-VAR narratives going for them this season, because they have been put under a microscope too much for everybody to come around and go, Chelsea getting decisions, Chelsea getting decisions. But if the decisions go against Chelsea, no one says niche. But like I said, we can't sit here and complain about decisions, because at the end of the day, similar to the Bayern game, similar to the Brentford game, no matter what goes for us, we weren't good enough over 90 minutes. And I think out of that Chelsea team yesterday, you can pick a handful of performers. I think Reece James, excellent. I think he did, I say excellent, this is in the context of the team. I don't think anybody had an excellent game yesterday, but I think Reece James was by far and away one of our better players. I thought the deliveries he puts in on the right, obviously the shape change, allowed him to get forward a little bit more, but he shows why he is the best right back in the world on his day. His deliveries are superb, defending, his attacking. He is genuinely the complete package, the best all-round right back, right wing back, full back in the world. There's not a better one on either side. I am very, 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 very sure of that. And like I said, I think Chalobah was all right. I don't think he was as bad as people said. It seems like he's been getting a lot of abuse again. I feel like Chelsea fans need to just grow up, because I think this is our 3rd or 4th loss in like 30 games. And look, the majority of those, or a lot of those, might have been Conference League and Club World Cup. Lads, we've won 2 trophies in the last 2-3 months. Like, let's not all turn on. Let's not be saying manager outlet. I'll be the first to say he had an awful game in terms of the in-game management. I think he lost his head yesterday. I think he made a mistake early on, tried to compensate with that. And yeah, by half-time, by 2-0 down, and in the situation, by the time Casemiro gets the second yellow card, I think it's too late. I personally would have taken, would have made those 2 subs at half-time, put on Gittins and Garnacho, and just said, go, for Fofana and some, another defender, maybe Cucurella, and just said, fucking go for it. You've got nothing to lose at that point. You're 2-0 down against Man United. You're going to get absolutely crucified in the media any which way. Just go for it. Go balls to the wall. Get your players on. The fact that he does not want to throw on a player like Gittins, I'm looking at that bench and thinking Gittins is, with the conditions, with the situation, with Chelsea wanting to just go fast counter-attack, go at Mazraoui and Dorgu in horrible slippery conditions. You want Jamie Gittins, fast, direct, dangerous, aggressive. Arguably, yeah, Garnacho as well. While that was one that I was a little bit on the fence on, because, you heard the reception he was getting. I didn't know if that was going to get to him, his mental, and that might have been a reason for Enzo Maresca not putting him on. Enzo Maresca said in the press conference after the game that it was because Fofana came over to him and said, I'm tired, which is another reason why I can kind of get that you might not want to take 2 players off at half-time and play the whole kind of second half with, Cucurella, who's a liability when his head gets lost. Reece James, injury liability. Fofana, injury liability. I just think there was too many variables in there to take that big risk at half-time. So I can understand it, but at the same time, it's one of those where the game is, I feel like the game is lost anyway. If you finish the game with 2 players sent off, 1 player injured, and you've only got 8 on the pitch, so be it. We're 2-0 down to a diabolical Manchester United, one of the worst Manchester United sides I've ever seen. 2-0 down at half-time. But it seems like we say that every year. I kind of clocked that as I said that, as the words were coming out of my mouth. I said first thing in the video, Chelsea love to give Man United easy points. I don't know why Brentford, I did it in my short a couple of weeks ago, and people, why are you giving Brentford credit? Why are you giving Man United credit? it's not about giving them credit. It's about understanding and recognising the pattern of behaviour that my team seems to implement every single time they play these teams, home or away, year in, year out, Premier League, domestic cups. We just struggle against these mid teams, and I mean, shouldn't throw stones at people in glass houses. Shouldn't throw stones. Yesterday we were very much a mid team. I think bar, those two, Chalobah, Cucurella, Chalobah, Reece James. I thought Cucurella did okay, but he lost his head in the second half, and I wasn't very happy with that. Andre Santos pulling him away from the referee when he got booked. To have a 21-year-old pulling one of your most senior players away, just showed everything about, typified the game yesterday. The older players that need to be, that was the main takeaway from me. The older players that need to be providing the leadership, the need to be steady in the ship in a situation, in a time, in a game like that, they all lost their heads. They were nowhere to be seen. Yeah, I think mentally, attitude, this Chelsea team was way off it yesterday. I think you saw that with Harry Maguire and De Ligt, big physical challenges. They just wanted it. And to be fair, I think in a situation where a team like Man United goes 2-0 up in a game like that, they are thinking this is an absolute miracle. I will do anything to keep this result. I will do anything for these 3 points. And that is, the main thing that was missing in the game yesterday, the mentality, team to team, even with the right substitution. Like I said, even with those subs that Enzo Maresca made, we've got enough on the pitch to cause them problems. We showed them that in the second half. We have more than enough. Enzo Fernandez, Moises Caicedo, Andre Santos in that midfield should have bossed it way more than they did. Two out of those three. I think Andre Santos did very well when he came on. He lost the ball a little bit too many times, but he was thrown on in a very difficult, unprecedented situation for an incredibly young player with very little experience in the Premier League, and I thought he gave a very good account of himself. And Moises Caicedo, when does this guy not perform at a 10 out of 10 level? I mean, yeah, maybe Wednesday against Bayern Munich but actually, you know what? Apart from that challenge on Harry Kane, I don't think he was that poor against Bayern Munich. I think everyone, again, jumps on him just because he has 10 out of 10 performances every week. As soon as he has an 8 out of 10 performance, everyone's like, oh, he's shit. It was still a very good performance. And again, I thought he did very, very well to hold it together. And I tell you what, in the conditions, he did incredibly well not to get a booking, because that was the bet that I had that went to pot incredibly quickly. I think I had Mazraoui booked because Estevao was on the wing. I had Casemiro booked, which went through. I had Caicedo booked, and then I had Cole Palmer shot. And obviously, Estevao and Palmer taken off before 20 minutes. It was a non-starter, that one. But yeah, I just think all in all, it wasn't enough. To have 4-5 players perform out of 11 is crazy. But aside from the whole mentality thing, I think my takeaway from Maresca and the club is that a lot of these signings weren't his, that there is a big difference between what he wants and what he asks for and what the club give him. It seems like Gittins he has no interest in using. The fact that he would rather bring on Tyreek George, I said it earlier, the fact that he would rather bring on a player that we almost got rid of on deadline day and that the club were happy to let go, and that he has said previously he wants to go out and get more game time, and he didn't look arsed yesterday. I'm a big fan of Tyreek George, but I don't think I want to see him in a Chelsea shirt again. If that's the performance that he's going to give off the bench, half-arsing it, it's like, do you want to move? I mean, he threw himself about. He was in a very difficult situation against some big physical centre-backs in a position that he doesn't, is not natural to him. Obviously, there's a lot of variables, but I'm sitting there looking at the bench and looking at Mark Yu, looking at Garnacho, looking at Chalobah and Gittins, and thinking surely one of them makes more of an impact, plays João Pedro in the 9, and one of them makes a more of an impact playing slightly deeper or off one side. So many questions that I think need to be answered by Maresca, but I think Chelsea fans that are looking for answers, like myself, are going to be disappointed, because I do think this is very much a club-manager divide. We saw how vocal Enzo Maresca was about getting a centre-back in the window. He came out at the end of the window and said, I wasn't being clear, I'm looking internally for a centre-back, but it's very clear that he doesn't trust anybody to do the job that Levi Colwill does. He doesn't see any of them as a ready-made replacement. Goalkeeper, I think the fact that we were in for Maignan, the fact that Maignan was available for 18 million and Donnarumma was available for 26 million, and we've stuck with Robert Sanchez, I think that is the most criminal thing out of all of this. The biggest thing that irritated me was I've seen conversations this week about how Robert Sanchez needs to be given his flowers. For 7 months, he's been on top of his game, hasn't made a mistake. You guys need to watch Chelsea more closely. He makes 2-3 horrible mistakes every single game. The amount of goals this guy has cost us, the amount of points this guy has cost us, you could argue that that's another 3 points to add to the tally yesterday. Because you know what? If you're going to come out flying like you are against Mbeumo, you're going to have to. You need to win that ball, mate. And another thing I just want to say very quickly: it was a red card. It was a horrible decision. He is a bozo. Everyone on commentary was like, oh, he's cleaned him out, hasn't touched the ball. He touched the ball. He touched the ball before the man. He got a touch on the ball, but no one on commentary, VAR didn't look at it. I didn't expect them to. Like I said, it was a red card. I'm not asking for that. But I'm just looking for a little bit of objective opinion, a little bit of unbiased commentary. I'd like to see someone rooting for us, rather than it feeling every time like I watch Chelsea, I've got to watch it with the commentary off. I'm sitting there absolutely stewing like these guys know nothing. They are just chatting shit for, I don't know, for agenda, for views, for content. I don't know. But it seems like a lot of people don't have a very good idea, well, A, about Chelsea, and B, what the rules are in this not so beautiful game anymore. Because, you know, this whole weekend, this whole season's been an absolute mess for officiating. We've been saying it ever since VAR's been brought in. We've been saying it previous to that, but, you know, different strokes for different folks. VAR is a completely different kettle of fish. The problems it has brought with it, absolutely diabolical. And the referee performance yesterday was absolutely diabolical, in line with what we've been receiving and seeing all season. So, yeah, in a game full of excuses, I just want to remind everybody watching that we are taking no excuses. This was very much an us problem, an our fault. This was an awful performance from Chelsea, and we fully deserve to get spanked by a team that is nowhere near as good as us. On paper, in form, yeah. You could go up against Manchester United 100 times out of 100, and this Chelsea team could be in the best form of their lives and they would win very few games. I don't know what it is, like I said earlier, about these teams that Chelsea, just these bogey teams that Chelsea cannot beat. By, you know, Manchester United are certainly very near the top of the pile. But before I leave you, just a quick word on the Bayern Munich game. Again, I don't think it's... I think a lot of Chelsea fans are going over and above. I think there's been far too much dramatisation, far too many extremes being thrown about, like Enzo Maresca needs to go, what's he doing, get the board out, da-da-da. Look, there's clearly a lack of cohesion, a lack of communication, and a lack of real unity around the club at the moment, from team to boardroom. And I just think it's such a far cry from where we were 2 months ago in the Club World Cup. You know, beating PSG, the best team in the world at the time, absolutely rolling them over. This Chelsea team just needs to take stock. You know, I know it's always a little bit difficult when you come back from the international break, but it's difficult for everybody. It's not just difficult for us. We can't use that as an excuse. Can't use, you know, Cole Palmer, Colwood as an excuse, because realistically, although, you know, yes, we are expected to not be as effective without our main players, you've spent £2 billion on, you know, some of the greatest talent from across Europe, from across the world. We should have more than enough to supplement injuries. They might not be, you know, as good, but we're not asking for that. We're not asking for, you know, Isaac and Ekitike. We're not asking for, you know, a direct swap with an almost as good individual. We're just asking for somebody. We're asking for people to be played in the positions that they've been brought into play in, and to show the faith in them that they were promised. I don't get it. Again, I feel like the situations is very much Enzo Maresca is battling with a team that is not entirely his. But again, you know, in midweek, I thought we did it to ourselves, starting incredibly late, starting incredibly slow. I think as Chelsea fans, it's been an incredibly tough week to, you know, to be on that high, to be riding that momentum, to be looking at the trajectory that we are on. You know, although it was only 3 games in the Premier League, unbeaten, you know, it was building blocks. It was slow and steady. And I feel like this last week has brought it all crashing down, brought a lot of us back to reality. But I don't want to let I don't want to sit here and start complaining and say, oh, we're never going to make it. It's a small reality check. It's one league game and it's one Champions League game. We saw from City last season there is more than enough time for us still to qualify in the Champions League, so I'm not getting hung up on that. Bayern away was always going to be a difficult game, and if you were expecting Chelsea in their first Champions League game back in over 800 days to go to the Allianz Arena and score 4 goals, you're nuts. You've lost your marbles. Yeah, I think that's my parting message is, however bad it is, however bad it seems, it could be worse. We could be supporting a team like Man United, Tottenham, Arsenal week in, week out, not winning trophies. At least there is light at the end of the tunnel for Chelsea. It may not be incredibly bright right now. It may be, on about 10% opacity, but it is there. It's not a train, as Onge said. There is still hope. There are still a lot of things that can go right for us. And I think when you take into account the last couple of months as a whole, there is no need to massively overreact about this last week. But that being said, these Chelsea players need to fix up very quickly. I expect Enzo Maresca to ring the changes for Tuesday's game in the Carabao Cup or EFL Cup, whatever it is, against Lincoln. I'd like to see a fair few youngsters get a start because I think they've been incredibly positive. Although I have been slacking with the youth match reports, I have just been away. So don't worry, they will be flowing thick and fast as of next week. Plenty of football to get back into it, and plenty of content will be on this channel this week. You will hopefully hear from myself and Mr. C Money again on Tuesday with our weekly roundup. Depends if we do something with that Lincoln game, but we'll let you know either way. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Follow @2blues podcast on the Instagram and the TikTok. And something I want to say that I don't say nearly enough on this channel, I do say it has always been our stance. It has always been our stance across social media. Free Palestine. Free Palestine. That's it. That's all the words you need to know. Free Palestine. Every single day and twice on a Sunday. Until next time, up the Chels.